All right, guys. Our next guest is absolutely tremendous. You know, from an excellent long-time commentary work on the Contender Series and now UFC pay-per-views, ESPN analyst, Alta ambassador, host of 101, and also one of our favorites to chat to. But Taylor Swift, move aside, our favorite Kansas City Chiefs supporter is in the house right now after the longest, possibly most impressive win for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs this past weekend. Laura Sanko, welcome to Submission Radio Talk UFC 298 and, of course, the unofficial celebration party. Can't believe you guys got it done. Congratulations. Look at the outfit. You got the outfit going today as well.
I had to get the outfit going. I would be swag surfing if you guys even knew what that was. But the music's not playing, so I'm not going to even attempt that. I had to do the lip, though. I'm not even a big Taylor Swift fan, but you know what? When we win like that, you got to do the things, all the things.
Amazing. I thought it was just red for Valentine's Day, so thank you for bursting my bubble. But congratulations, Laura. That's phenomenal.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You went to your mum's house, did you say, or something? Like you guys were doing a big thing?
No, I was at home because my son has been not feeling well. So I wasn't at a fun, crazy big party, but the game itself was celebration enough. I've lived here 35 years now. So pretty much my entire life. And the truth is that for 30-ish of those years, there was really not a lot to cheer about. So everybody's like, haven't you won enough? And no, when you've lived here your whole life, that's not even something that enters my mind. So
amazing. Well, that's tremendous, man. Super happy for you. But of course, we're here to talk about UFC 298. A lot of juicy fights to get onto. First and arguably most important question regarding this card and these fights. Have you seen Alex Volkanovski's sports bet commercial yet?
Oh my gosh. Can I tell you something?
What a masterpiece,
There are a lot of attempts online lately to be funny, right? And some of them hit, some of them miss. It's 100% hit. I was laughing from the get-go when he passes the licorice.
Yeah. Usually a big hit.
So well.
Yeah.
It was perfect. There used to be, do you guys get Sports Center in Australia? I feel dumb for not knowing that.
Yeah. And I think Phil Murphy hosts it. Yeah, he does a great job.
So back in the day, there used to be these Sports Center commercials that were very much in that vein and in that tone. And it reminded me exactly of one of those old Sports Center commercials, just taking the piss from the get-go and Volk playing it so perfectly straight. I was phenomenal. I was legitimately laughing.
Do you get the neighbor to sit cage side for the fight? Is that the next move from Sports?
Beverly?
Little hexagon.
She needs to be. She needs to be a recurring character. I mean, this needs to become a series, and she needs to be a recurring character for sure.
I love it. I love when he falls asleep in the chair, tapes over the like fight prep with the coronation. Oh man, that was so good. The rotary. I love the credit card scam where he's like, "Oh, this is Dana now," and then he picks up, and then he's like, "Oh, my credit card." And everyone's like, "No, hang up." I love when they're like, "It's a scam," and he's like, "Oh, they do that now." Is that a thing? All right, but what do you make of this narrative of Volkanovski's age, right? He's 35, 36 in September. 35 is kind of like the mythical age in MMA. I don't think anyone's won a championship in the lighter weight classes at that age or any later. But obviously, in the lighter weight classes where speed and reflexes, when they decline, it's a massive thing. But at the end of the day, it's also, dependent on the individual as well. What do you make of the fact that this is such a huge factor in this fight? And also keeping in mind that with Volkanovski, the last couple of losses he's had have been to, arguably one of the greatest fighters currently going to date. And the last one was on a 2-week notice where he basically wasn't training beforehand. So what do you make of age being a factor in this fight? Is it real or is it myth?
I have gone back and forth on this piece of it all week long, and I keep coming to a different conclusion depending on the day that you ask me. And our common friend Luke Thomas did a great piece on this and kind of delved into it another layer. So I am openly borrowing from some of what he offered up there. Here's what I'll say. Before I was reminded of that statistic, I was very heavily in my mind thinking that this is Volkanovski's division, right? This is where he is undefeated. This is where he has knocked off champion after champion, great after great. The two only other people that could be called GOATs in this division, he has beaten both of them and beaten one of them 3 times, and the third time to a whole other level. Like, you can't say enough about his ability to outdo himself at 145. It's absolutely incredible. On the flip side, it's not, it's not some magical fairy dust thing or Ouija board number that these people are coming up with. What is being floated out there is a statistical fact, and it is so statistically relevant because I think it's out of 30, I want to say it's like 35 attempts. So it's a statistically relevant number to the point where it goes from being almost correlative to causational, like in a mathematical sense. So like, it's really hard to just say, oh, forget that. It's just, I don't know the word I'm looking for here, but it matters, I guess is my point. You can't deny that it matters. And I would love for it to not matter. And I, like everybody else, I think, who maybe had forgotten about that before they started doing their analysis of this fight. If anybody is going to buck that trend, it is going to be Alexander Volkanovski. For many, many, many reasons. He's already bucked the trend in a number of different ways. He doesn't have the height to be able to compete in this weight division, and yet he's the greatest to ever do it. He doesn't, there's a number of different factors that he's already bucking trends. He's exceptional in every way that you can be exceptional, but you can't pretend like this is just some, like I said, some Ouija board thing. Like it's a fact that exists. It doesn't mean that the statistics will bear out in this specific case. But if you're asking me for a conclusive answer, I don't know if I'm prepared to give you one, to be quite honest. I think I am leaning toward the idea that Alex Volkanovski relies less on specific athletic skills that may or may not deteriorate with time, and more on skills that don't so much deteriorate with time. In other words, technique, less emphasis on speed and power, more on technique. And I also think that from a mentality perspective, that we are going to see the best Alex Volkanovski we've ever seen, because the thing that stands out to me about him the most is his ability to continually outdo himself and rise to whatever occasion is brought to him. I think he really has a bad taste in his mouth about the last fight at 155, as he should. And we're going to see a motivated Volk. And I think every time we see a motivated Volk, like the third Max fight, like the Yair Rodriguez fight, coming off the first loss of his career, I guess it would be technically the second loss of his career, but first loss in a very, very long time. That's when we see him at his best.
Yeah, he might have one of the best mental games out of anyone in MMA, because we've seen him do some remarkable things. I remember this one time he was supposed to, have like a title shot or an interim title shot, and he got stuck on a border somewhere, had to go like drive through Canada, cut weight in the car, and was still going to do it anyway. And it's just like, this guy is just on another level. And I know there are people out there that are saying, look, has he taken this fight a little too soon after his knockout loss? People worry it might be a little bit too soon. But I also think it might be a little bit amplified because Alex was so candid after the loss about how much he needs this and how much he wants to stay active. Wonder, Laura, as a fighter yourself, like, what's your read? What do you think he was sort of feeling in that moment?
I think the vast majority of fighters can identify with what he was talking about. I know Ilia Topuria kind of said, I don't have those feelings. I don't know if I entirely believe that or not. I think that fighting does something to your psyche that cannot be replaced or not easily replaced with other things. And when you're in the midst of it, the peak of your career, it's only amplified. I think that piece of it has been blown a little bit out of proportion just because the footage is fresh and we're seeing it for the first time, right? We're seeing him look dejected in a locker room after a loss and talking openly about things he could have done differently. But the reality is, we talk about decision making and technique, and does he have the cardio, and are his reflexes on point? Let's not forget, this is his job. This is how the man puts food on the table, not just today, but for the future. So regardless of hand surgery, regardless of having an infant, for all those reasons, it was a terrible idea to take this fight. 100%. But if you are getting a new contract and you are, according to, close sources, making substantially more to do that, it's the right decision. It just is. And it makes it a much harder decision. But those are the things that because we're not privy to the exact numbers of his bank accounts and what difference it did or didn't make, we tend to not talk about them as much, but that's his real life. And it's every bit as important as what it may or may not have done to his status in the division.
100%. And we'll circle back around to that as well, and like Volk's future and stuff. But just quickly, I want to talk a little bit about Ilia, because, he's on the flip side, right? And he has zero shortage of confidence. You mentioned how he mentioned that, he doesn't really worry about those kinds of things. He doesn't seem to worry about anything. What do you make of like the suits, the bio saying that he's already champ, the record already updated, the upcoming movie about him winning the title that's coming out after this fight? Talk about going all in, right? He's gone all in. He's either going to look like a genius superstar, or he's going to be on the receiving end of some brutal memes for the short-term future in MMA. What do you make of him and his confidence heading into this one? Because I like, whether you like him or not, whether you think he's going to win or not, like, I love the way he's handling it, and you have to respect when people go all in like this.
Well, and I think that, and I'm certainly not the first to say this, but there's definitely a McGregor-esque feeling to all of it, right? The speaking into existence what you already believe to have happened in the future, if that makes sense. The whole idea of manifestation. And I love it. And I think that when you weigh out the possibility, like, okay, of course you can look like a fool after the fact if what you stated as fact turns out to not be true. But I think that if you're looking at the scale of pros and cons, the pros far outweigh the cons, because quite frankly, we move on so quickly in this MMA world that we appreciate the guys who are willing to take the risk to say it and to speak it into existence and to put it in their Instagram bio. And I love it. I think as a fighter, you have to be a little bit delusionally confident to participate in a sport that in reality is played on a razor's edge. And as we go back to so often, any guy can win on any given day. So to be able to summon up supreme confidence in a situation like this, it's special, and you have to be able to do that. And I think the guys, here's what it comes down to for me. I can almost watch someone give an interview and maybe they use the same words as Ilia did. I can tell the difference between the guy who is saying it so that he's convincing himself and saying it as a foregone conclusion. And Ilia says it like it's a foregone conclusion. And there's something very powerful in that.
Yeah, outside of all the criticism from people about his turtlenecks and this and that, I think the difference, turtlenecks and chains, but the thing about it is, he's serious, he's a stone-faced, serious, almost method acting when he does it, and it's a lot more effective rather than someone who's being theatrical and over the top. Like, he is being over the top, but when he's speaking it, you could see this guy looks like he believes it, and he's not sort of overdoing it, So it's fascinating. Since he is so confident, though, Laura, where do you see him challenging Volkanovski the most in this fight?
Well, I think for him, for Ilia, it's always going to be the power, the boxing and the power, right? I think that his ability to draw Volkanovski into the pocket, possibly press Volkanovski against the cage, not in a literal sense in fence wrestling, because I think the grappling is a whole other thing to talk about, but pressure him where Volkanovski is able to move laterally a little bit less freely, because I think that's where Ilia is at his absolute best. When he can rip off those combinations that look so smooth and are clearly so effective. But what I think really is the challenge at the end of the day is just how well-rounded he is. And it's something that's not really all that sexy to talk about. Like, he's just really well-rounded. But the fact is, he is very well-rounded, very much in the same way that Volkanovski is well-rounded. And we haven't necessarily seen Volkanovski be challenged in that way in a while, in terms of he can probably match me here. He can probably at least keep up with me here. He might be a little bit better than me here. So when we're looking at all the different, sections of the game, they're all here with each other. And so I think that there's not really a place in this fight where Topuria doesn't bring a danger factor, which is something different than Volkanovski's seen at featherweight for a while.
Well, that's a good point. Like you look at someone, say, because Ili's grappling is great, and you look at someone like Ortega, who Volk has faced, and he was able to overcome that. But then again, you're right, like about the, Ilia being sort of more well-rounded and bringing maybe more threats in different areas. Granted that Ortega was coming off a lot of momentum, and, he had the knockout power, and he knocked out guys like, Korean Zombie and Frankie Edgar, et cetera, et cetera. Going back to Volk, it, like we were talking about before, it's no secret, and I think this is where a lot of the emotions come from. He is nearing the end of his career. Like, this is a big talking point now. Joe Lopez sees, another good couple of years, but maybe not more than that. So we kind of have to appreciate Alex while we have him. This may be, the one of the last, I don't want to say big moments, but we got to start sort of cherishing his prime years. Since he has a limited amount of time, what do you think he should do in terms of weight class? Because the question is, do you stay at featherweight and just really solidify yourself as like the undeniably greatest at featherweight? Do you go up to lightweight? But then what's the goal at lightweight? If as long as Islam's champion, it's a hard thing to see him being, in there against him for the sake of the UFC booking it, or even Islam maybe wanting it or not wanting it. He'd have to go through like maybe 3 huge names at lightweight in the space of maybe a year. By then he's 36, 37. If Islam's champion, it's another tough one. And if you're not going to go for the belt at lightweight, what is the point of going there? What do you think he should do, Laura?
I would like to see him stay at featherweight and maybe take on one more up-and-comer like a Movsar Evloev. And if he gets past him, at that point, like what argument would there be to make in terms of his goatness at 145? And when you start to see the twilight of your career, heading towards you, I think it's all about, this sounds kind of stupid, but it's about having fun. And that's when you go up to lightweight and you take fights where you're making bank and you're fighting fun guys like Justin Gaethje or, whoever at lightweight. And it's not necessarily like, I'm going to go to lightweight, I'm going to be a double champ. Because you're right, I don't know that he's going to get a third crack at Islam soon enough. But I don't know that he needs to, right? Like, I think you go up to lightweight and you take out some greats there, that only solidifies your status as an overall mixed martial artist. The weight cut, I know, is a tremendous one for him. I'm sure he's sick of it. So for me, I think you take out one more up-and-comer and then go have fun. Enjoy your money.
Yeah, and it's exactly what you said. Like, people don't realize he's got that contract now, so you're going to want to see that contract out if you can to, maximize the earning for your family. So for me, yeah, from a money perspective, if you don't have to cut weight, maybe there'll be a couple of names from at lightweight. But I have to say, before we move on, props to Alex Volkanovski, because he's coming off this loss against one of the toughest guys in the division. And we've seen champions not want to give people, young up-and-comers, opportunities and sort of pick and choose who they fight. And Alex Volkanovski is just an incredible fighter who just always wants to fight the best of the best of the best and always wants to stay active. When it's all said and done, him, Israel, they're just rarities that don't come along very often, not just for their skill, but just for the fact that they're such great human beings, the mental game, and the fact that they stay so active. So we need to appreciate them while they're here, guys.
Yeah. I think what you just said is so important, and it's not something we're very good at in this sport, is appreciating guys when they are here at their peak, because it's almost like, I don't know, you're afraid to, I don't know if it's a factor of you want to see more or you're afraid to become too much of a bandwagon. I don't know what it is, but I agree. Like, we need to be more appreciative when we have them, because I know that when the day comes that Alex Volkanovski is no longer on the UFC roster, we're going to miss the days of Alexander Volkanovski. And we're going to sit around and talk about, oh man, can you imagine if whatever name up and comer had to fight Alex? Like, that's who we're going to compare everybody to. So we got to appreciate him while we have him.
100%.
We've got this weird thing where, like, someone will climb the ranks and will push them and support them. And then there's this weird thing sometimes where it's like, we've supported this guy enough. You know what I mean? And then it's like, what did we do? The guy's gone now. And he doesn't want to come back. Some of the, we get some fighters that are like, I'm not coming back. This is too much of a pain in the ass dealing with these fans, So just appreciate them, guys. We've got to change the way we look at this. Sorry, Cass, you go.
No, I was going to agree with you, but then also we're going to talk about Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. There's a few other. There's actually a lot of juicy fights on this card. These guys are really in an interesting position. Who do you think has more to lose here between Rob and Paulo Costa? Because both guys need to win in order to stay in the title picture. They both need the momentum badly. You know, Costa needs a win in general after obviously all the unfortunate inactivity, especially if he ever wants to be champion, or at least considered in that champion, equation. And then Rob, who he was almost going to basically get another title fight at UFC 293, and then after that Dricus du Plessis loss, he really needs to start moving back towards the title. He was almost like, for the longest time, like, that guy's going to be fighting for the title and beating everybody else. And now that's sort of in jeopardy. And unlike Costa, I feel like Rob's appeal is more about being the best in the world, as opposed to like, hey, he's a hilarious personality who we kind of enjoy, whether he's fighting for the belt or not. Who do you think has more to lose in this one?
Well, I certainly think in terms of MMA stakes, it's Robert Whittaker, because he is so close to, and you always have the feeling when you're watching Robert Whittaker that any moment he's going to click back in and make another run at the title. So in that sense, I do think that Robert Whittaker has more at stake here, but Paulo Costa is fighting for relevancy in this division in a lot of ways. You know, it's just been a lot of weirdness with him for the past few years, and it's too long of a period of time without us being able to point at something and going, okay, that's why he's here. That's why he's been in the top of this division for a very long time, something you can hang your hat on. And we just haven't had that footage in a very long time. And I was doing my breakdown with Dean Thomas the other day, and it's like, you look at him and he just looks like he should win everything, right? He looks like he should win everything. And there are times where I feel like he just underperforms, and it's kind of frustrating to watch. And, you know, whereas you've got guys like Volkanovski, like Topuria, where you can point to a consistent evolution, it's harder to point to that in Paulo Costa's game, because he's just been so inconsistent and even getting to the octagon. And then when he does get there, there's a weight miss, or it's a weird matchup at altitude that just doesn't really serve any, I don't want to say it doesn't serve any purpose, but like, it doesn't certainly serve your purpose in terms of your standing in the rankings. So both of them have a lot at stake. It's just very different in terms of very, very different things for each.
Yeah, like last real Paulo Costa thing where I was like, wow, was that Yoel Romero fight? Yeah. That was a long time ago. Like the Luke Rockhold fight, obviously Luke's super tough, but Luke still had some nice moments in that fight. So I think a lot of people were still like, oh, Luke, like he came back, did this and that. Kind of took away a little bit from Paulo's win. Yeah, that's a long time. A lot of fans wouldn't even seen that Yoel Romero fight. So it's a big one for him. When this fight, by the way, with Robert Whittaker, Laura, was first booked in 20 earlier on, most people had Rob winning it handily the first time around. And now we're seeing a lot of people sort of questioning if he can get it done. I think it's got to do with the DDP loss, but does it surprise you that people have kind of forgotten Rob's body of work, not to mention his activity? And how do you see this one playing out?
Well, I mean, I think that's the only thing that people are remembering, and they're just sort of, 1 + 1 = 2 in their mind, but the math is too simplistic, right? Like, I get that Paulo Costa.
I think it's crazy. I don't think much has changed since that was initially booked in 2021.
And DDP is the champion. He went on to win the belt. It's not like he lost to Sean Strickland. Yeah.
And I get that there are some similarities in that they're both very physically big, sort of brutish, come forward, get in your face types of guys, but they have very different games. And Whittaker, being the tactician that he is, I would always give him an advantage over someone who fights the way that Paulo Costa does. Not that Paulo Costa can't win this fight. He's got tremendous boxing. He's got an amazing body kick. Like, he can knock Robert Whittaker out, of course. But yeah, I think the memory of most MMA odds makers is like the size of a mouse, And
so true.
I can't remember if he's just come out right and said this or not, but he underestimated DDP, like all of us were. He just did, point blank. He didn't think he was that good. A lot of us didn't think that DDP was that good, and apparently he is.
And DDP did not underestimate him.
No.
Even though he was going in not 100%, that was the fight of his life. Everything was running on.
I almost feel like it's a different but similar narrative in terms of not narrative, but like mentalities with Rob and Volko. Like, they're both coming off those losses. They're both super, super motivated, and they're both here to sort of like right those wrongs. And then I think also like Costa's got a similar mentality as well here because of like, all the embarrassment for a while. So I think he knows that he has to sort of perform. We've got the makings of some like phenomenal fights here, which is one of the reasons why 298 is just such a sexy, tasty treat in general. Before we talk about the next fight, we're talking about sexy, tasty treats. And hey, cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there is a way, way better way to break your bad habits. We're not talking about some weird, funky voodoo or hypnotism or anything like that. We're talking about our sponsor and our good friends at Fume. They look at the problem in a very, very different way. Not everything in a bad habit is wrong, though. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-winning flavored air device that does exactly that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. So you get it. Basically, instead of the bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy, which makes replacing your bad habits super, super easy. It fills the void in a natural, guilt-free way. And your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for your fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing while breaking your bad habit. Stopping, it's something we all put off because it is difficult, but switching to Fume is super, super easy, enjoyable, and even fun. Fume has served over 150,000 customers and has thousands of success stories, and there is no reason that can't be you. Join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com/Submission Radio or scan the QR code and use code Submission Radio to get 10% off when you get the Journey Pack today. That is tryfum.com and use code Submission Radio to save an additional 10% off on your orders today. Isn't that right, Dennis?
That's right, man. And what kind of New Year's resolutions have you guys made out there? Because if your balls aren't smooth, you guys aren't with Manscaped. But right now, this is the perfect time for your New Year's resolution check with our friends at Manscaped, because it's never too late to level up your grooming game and keep your bush tamed. And Manscaped's new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to looking good, feeling good, and turning the page on confidence this year. Whether you're going for a trim or that clean-shaven look, this trimmer has you covered. And by the way, it's trusted by over 10 million men worldwide, included me and Casper. This thing is unbelievable, guys. You guys can get 20% off with code Submission and also get free shipping. The ball has dropped, but don't drop the ball on your balls. And for my men out there who want the full grooming experience, look no further than Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0. In this grooming kit, you get the trusted lawnmower, Manscaped's ear and nose hair trimmer, and essential aftercare products with the Crop Soother, the Bowl Aftershave Lotion, and the Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. You got it all, baby. What about that toiletry bag that me and Cass use all the time? It's one of the 2 free gifts included with the Boxers 2.0, one of the most comfortable pair of underwear you will ever wear. Go to Manscaped right now. Use the code word Submission, 20% off and free shipping now, Cass.
100%. All right. Back to UFC 298. We mentioned there's some other juicy fights. Of course, Machado Garry versus Geoff Neal. I'm sure you are as well. It's a massive one, mainly because of the previous beef between these two that's already there. And now the absolute shitstorm that Ian went through before UFC 296. What an insane thing to witness. If you're Ian, how do you navigate this fight week? And in general, sort of your appeal and your character moving forward? Because he likes to stir the pot. That's great. We love that in MMA. It's great and entertaining. But then the fighters in the MMA community really turned on him in a massive way last time around. Do you think he can still get people to sort of cheer and be on his side? Or do you think he should sort of lean into it and fully steer into the idea of just being a heel? What I'm curious about, if he goes in there and beats Geoff Neal, does it in a phenomenal fashion, at what point do people sort of forget and then start focusing on the winning? Or is it a matter of like, you can get a highlight reel win here and the crowd are still going to feel a certain way? What do you think, Laura?
I think if he's able to win in big fashion, it goes a long way for him, because I think the MMA fan base in this particular instance, it's a weird male female thing. I think that they just don't. I hate that word so much. I'm not even going to say it, but the CUCK word.
Yeah.
Because I hate it because it's it's so ridiculous that we're talking about people's wives, right? But I think there's a part of the fan base that doesn't like him because in their mind they see his wife having too much power over his career, over him as a person, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you go out there and you prove that you're the man, whatever, I think that goes a long way in those particular fans' mind. I think for the week he needs to stay under the radar, lean into it when he has to, because there's going to be times where you can't avoid it. Lean into it when you need to. For the most part, stay under the radar and shut everybody up with what you're able to do inside the octagon. Because if he talks too much, he's just going to dig himself into an even bigger hole. Because the fact is that even though I think what happened to him, I didn't like one bit of it, he brought it on himself by doing it to other people, by doing it to guys like Geoff Neal and Neil Magny. So I so hate all of this type of stuff. Don't even get me started on it. And I know that probably makes me sound soft, whatever. There's like this new wave of we all have to love shit like that. And I just don't. I think it's ridiculous to bring people into the conversation that don't belong there. So I hope for his sake that the week goes pretty smoothly and he can just concentrate on fighting, because he's a tremendous fighter. But so is Geoff Neal. And we need to remember that. Like Geoff Neal gave Shavkat all he could handle. And I think that people to some degree are underestimating him a bit.
I don't think you're alone in that though, Laura. I think a lot of people turned on Ian because of some of the stuff that he said, but also I think a lot of them found it to be a bit uncomfortable and a bit like, this is kind of we don't like this kind of stuff. This is a little too much. This is a little too far. And then the way it played out, it was like, oh my God, can't believe this is happening. But just speaking of Geoff, he's a guy that brings it. You mentioned it with Shavkat. He brought it. This is not a guy that just stands back and lets a fight slide past him. He's going to be bringing it, and he's going to be moving forward, and he's going to be trying his best to basically put Ian out. How do you think this matchup goes? And stylistically, how do you think they kind of match up?
Well, I think they're a tough puzzle for each other. I think Ian, what he's so tremendous at is being dangerous at range. But Geoff, hands of steel for a reason, right? Like the guy has incredible knockout power. I think as long as Ian can stay on the outside, obviously that's going to be a fight that favors him. I don't think he gets enough credit for the cardio base that he has. So I think if he can avoid the power of Geoff Neal early in the fight, that'll suit him. But one thing I wanted to say, sort of more in line with what we were talking about just a second ago, I love that Ian Garry is now at Shootbox. I think it's maybe a surprising choice, and maybe we can criticize him for, jumping to all these different gyms and are you going to get the consistent training? If you watch, now I can't remember if it was Countdown or Embedded, but whatever it was, it's Embedded. If you watch the Embedded footage of him functioning at that gym and the way that they've embraced him, it's a very faith-based, family-centric type of gym. And you could almost just tell how healing it was for him to have a room full of people who weren't talking shit, who weren't giving him the side eye, who weren't mad that he was there and that his wife was there and that his baby was there. He almost got emotional, talking about the vibe that gym brings, how they all stand together and they pray together. And you can laugh at that if you want to, but like, I think for him in this position, with all of the tearing down that has happened to him online, to be surrounded by people who are uplifting him in a really deep sort of way is going to be huge coming into this fight week.
100%. That's an extremely valid point. You know what else? I feel like there's a lot on the line here. In general, an up-and-comer, especially one like Ian Garry, there's always a lot on the line. But do you think that if he wins here, we get him versus Colby Covington next? Or at least he calls him out on the stick afterwards? Because he's number 2 on that hit list for 2024. It would be an insane build-up. Yeah. And I wonder, who do you think would have more to win in that fight? Colby's in this tough position. He needs to win back a lot of that fan base. And I feel like Ian's probably the right play, right? Ian's another guy who's, in need of having that face turn, so to speak. If you go up against one of the other hated guys in the division, you might, it's almost like they're not mirror images, but they both need to win the same thing. And Ian obviously needs to progress his career. And I almost feel like one of the issues with Ian as well in that whole shitstorm before UFC 296 was the Sean Strickland effect. But Strickland almost can do no wrong. Like anything Sean says, everybody just loves him for it. Beats up Sneaker, everyone's like, phenomenal. has a thing with MGK. Like everyone's just loving it, and so if Strickland's dunking on you, you're almost certainly going to come out losing in that one. So anyway, going back to Colby and Ian, what's your thoughts, Laura?
No, you're 100% right. I don't think, because if you remember when Ian beat, and now I'm forgetting, D-Rod. I think it was when he beat D-Rod.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, this kid's the future."
Yeah.
Imagine that. Talking about what a tremendous fighter is. I mean, his skill set's phenomenal. He's so interesting to talk to on the microphone. Like, he has a lot of really engaging things to say. And then all it took was one guy who wasn't really related to the situation whatsoever to say something shitty for the entire. I mean, that's what I don't like about it, is like, he didn't really earn that, like, for the entire MMA ecosystem to turn on him. So yes, to your point, I do think that a Colby Covington call out, that's a tongue twister, would be a smart move. He'll need to be prepared, but I don't know what could be brought up at this point that would be any worse, right? Like, so you've kind of already been through the worst of it. I don't know how Colby could really make a fight week worse than the one that Ian already had. And to your point, people have really turned on Colby. I think the guys that used to love Colby now love Sean Strickland way more. And then after the way that Colby fought, they're like, no, we're done with you. So I actually think that Ian would probably be the more liked individual going into that fight. And stylistically, it's a fun one. They both need it.
And it's good for Colby because I guess he was on the show and really bad luck. He ended up breaking something in his foot early in the fight. But I think the criticism has been for him, hey, like, who is he fought? He hasn't fought in a while. And I think if Ian wins here, he's got so much momentum. And it's like, hey, if Colby can go out there and beat a young up-and-comer like Ian Garry, that does a lot for him as well. That'd be like, hey, guys, Colby's still the best one. Let's get him back in there. By the way, just real quick, before we talk about Merab and Henry Cejudo fighting in the bantamweight division, what did you make of this crazy video of Henry firing his longtime coach, Eric, on camera during the countdown? I gotta ask, like, what? Like, we know Eric. He's a fun guy. Like, he loves to play around, and so does Henry. That did not look real to me. Did you think that was real? And if it is, like, how crazy would it be to actually pull off a move like that and shock him?
Well, I'm sure. I'm guessing that the shift of coaching is probably real. But do I think that was the first time he addressed that news to him? No, don't. It felt so 2000. What would that be? Like, it felt so 2005 reality television. Like, oh wait, get the camera. No, second take. This is our third take. No, this is our third take. Eric, I have something to tell you.
Yeah.
So there's no way that was the first conversation that they had about it. So I don't really know why he felt like that was the way to announce it. Maybe he just felt like people would really notice if Eric wasn't in his corner, and then they would, hypothesize maybe incorrectly about why that was.
Yeah.
Because I got a bio sheet update in my email, and his camp just says fight ready. It's not like he's not at fight ready anymore. I think he just is allowing other coaches to sort of take center stage. I don't know officially who that would be yet, but anyway, I thought that was
and then Merab's put out a video with him. Merab's like, hello, coach. Like, now Eric is his coach, and it's this whole thing going on. It's like the Sean O'Malley jacket, or the coach.
I didn't see that. He did?
Yeah. He's like, I want to welcome my new coach. And it's like Eric. And then shows a little video of him getting fired and then appearing with Merab. Like, hey, coach.
That would be amazing. It's so funny.
The ultimate heel turn. I'll tell you what, though.
One of the most underrated social media follows out there, like 100%. He's so good.
He's hilarious. I like how he delivers everything so dry, and stone face. That's the best part about it. I think the jacket was probably one of the best moments of 2023, to be quite honest.
It was incredible. So subtle.
You know what, this is a fascinating matchup, though, because obviously of their excellent grappling credentials, their styles, different but both effective in different ways. But I also wonder, do you feel like this is almost like a punishment? Does this feel like a punishment to Merab for sort of not wanting to, fight immediately against like the winner of Sean O'Malley and Aljo, and saying that, hey, I'm happy to step aside, countless times if Aljo wants to pursue that title again? Because it seems like, and this is partly what makes it so fascinating, the toughest stylistic matchup for Merab in the division, with Cejudo's, takedown defense and possibly thwarting a lot of Merab's game.
Yeah, it definitely feels like, I mean, listen, I work for the company. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's hard to see it in any other light than like a little bit of like, oh, you wanted to wait? Well, here you go.
Here's
you know?
Cejudo.
Yeah, exactly. Here, have Henry Cejudo, the toughest possible matchup for you. Whereas, Sean O'Malley might be one of the, at least stylistically, you would think on paper, one of the easier matchups for him. Although we've seen Sean certainly defensive takedowns and have his way with a couple of good guys that were good at wrestling. Yeah, it's I'm not going to call it a punishment. It's certainly an interesting matchup for him to have to go through to get to that championship spot. But we're the benefactors of it because it is such a fun fight. I'm excited that we get to see it because I am dying to know how these two do against each other. And I would say that Henry has not faced anybody that fights like Merab because Merab in my mind is one of one. I mean, you've got guys that are good wrestlers, guys that pursue the takedown pretty consistently, but he's head and shoulders above everyone in that division in terms of his myopic approach to takedown and not necessarily control, but just drown you, wash cycle, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It's a style of wrestling that not a lot of people employ because not a lot of people can employ it. It is the hardest type of wrestling, in my opinion, that you can have. Because a lot of grapplers, like, if you're a good grappler, typically you're good for a handful of takedowns, but what you're really good at is finding micro moments on the ground to recoup your gas that you just blew getting the takedown. Really good grapplers find these small moments where they can not rest, but like not be expending a ton of energy. And Merab just like doesn't even look for those moments. He finds the hardest part of grappling and just stays there. And I think even someone of Henry Cejudo's caliber is going to be challenged by that.
Yeah, I was thinking it's a tough matchup, but imagine if Merab never gets that title shot. It would just be one of those stories of a guy that was a great teammate, was really thoughtful, could have had the belt probably, and it just timing wise didn't work out. It's going to be fascinating how this works out. But yeah, definitely a hard matchup for both guys. Can't wait to see it. Guys, as we wrap up, one more congratulations to our friends at the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm pretty sure Patrick Mahomes is a big fan of the show, but we don't really care because as long as our friend Laura Sanko is on, it doesn't really matter. Thanks so much for joining us. Of course, follow Laura on socials at Laura_Sanko. Great follow. And we can't wait to see all your amazing work, Laura. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you, guys.
But what a card. UFC 298. What a card. Disney World, Disneyland, that's number 2. UFC 298. That's the real thrill ride this weekend. Thanks so much for joining us.